A common example that critics of Islam use in order to paint the narrative that Islam does not treat the genders equally is that of witness testimony. They allege that the testimony of a woman is considered half of that of a man. This is based on chapter 2, verse 283 of the Holy Quran, where the Quran speaks of the importance of having witnesses for financial transactions. The number of witnesses required is 2, as the Quran says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم واستشهدوا شهيدين من رجالكم فإن لم يكونا رجلين فرجل وامرأتان ممن ترضون من الشهداء أن تضل إحداهما فتذكر إحداهما الأخرى. And procure two witnesses from among your men, and if 2 men be not available, then 1 man and 2 women, of such as you like as witnesses, so that if either of the 2 women should be in danger of forgetting, the other may refresh her memory. And the witnesses should not refuse to testify when they are called upon to do so. First of all, it is important to note that Hazrat Mirza Tahir Ahmad, rahimahullah ta'ala, has noted that these verses apply to financial matters only and do not at all mean that in all legal and other affairs, 2 women should be requested in case a male witness is not available. Secondly, he has listed 4 important points which are necessary to fully understand their true import. Number 1, the verses do not at all require both women to testify. Number 2, the role of the second woman is clearly specified and confined to be that of an assistant. Number 3, if the second woman who is not testifying finds any part of the statement of the witness as indicative of the witness not having fully understood the spirit of the bargain, she may remind her and assist the witness in revising her understanding or refreshing her memory. And number 4, it is entirely up to that woman who is testifying to agree or disagree with her assistant. Her testimony remains as a single independent testimony, and in case she does not agree with her partner, hers would be the last word. The first point that Hazrat Mirza Tahir Ahmad rahimahullah ta'ala has brought up is that the verse does not imply anywhere that 2 female testimonies are equal in weight to 1 male testimony. The relevant portion of the verse only implies testimony from a single female witness, not 2. It is only when she requires assistance and needs any help in recalling something she can employ the help of her assistant. Evidently, the role of the assistant is to refresh her memory, as the verse notes, not to provide testimony in her own right. If a single female witness had not been considered enough or had been deemed deficient in some way, it would have applied to several other scenarios and circumstances as well. For instance, in chapter 4, verse 16 of the Holy Quran, when witnesses are mentioned, the language used is gender neutral, and there is no qualifier given in regards to maintaining a ratio of 1 male witness to 2 female witnesses. It implies that a single female testimony is indeed equal to a single male testimony. The same is the case in terms of getting testimony of a wife against her husband regarding inappropriate behavior, as discussed in chapter 24, verses 7 to 9. Here too, the weight of a single female witness, the wife, is considered sufficient and equal to the weight of a single male witness, the husband. What is more is that giving testimony in religious matters is much more important than giving testimony in worldly matters. When it comes to religious matters, such as those found in ahadith, statements and traditions of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we find that one of the most common narrators is Hazrat Aisha radhiyallahu anha, the wife of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Many other women have also narrated from Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In none of these cases has a Muslim ever suggested that the testimony of a woman is not acceptable unless corroborated or confirmed by another woman. In fact, many companions and others from the early days of Islam often consulted Hazrat Aisha radhiyallahu anha on matters of religious significance. If the testimony of a single woman was only half of that of a man, none of those narrations from single women would have ever been accepted. Yet, they are not just accepted, but also revered. It is important to understand the significance of this matter. The verse under discussion, chapter 2, verse 283, is in relation to financial matters only, pertaining to worldly wealth, and are not as important as religious matters, where a person's salvation and connection with God is at stake. Yet in every case, and there are thousands of them, a single woman's testimony about what the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said or did is taken without question. In light of this discussion, Sohail Ahmed, who has the alias Reason on Faith, has raised some doubts and questions in his book, The Things We Think But Are Too Afraid to Ask. The discussion on this verse that he presents is a lengthy one, and I will add the link to his book in the description to this video, but I want to present some selected quotations which should give us an idea of what he's arguing. Commenting on Hazrat Mirza Tahir Ahmed's 4-point summary of chapter 2, verse 283, Sohail writes the following: Nowhere in Quranic 2:283 is there any evidence that one of the females is the prime witness and that the other is the assistant witness. He also writes, nothing is mentioned as to why the prime female witness needs an assistant in the first place. Is it biological? Was it a temporal thing for 6th century Arabia? Do we have authority to override it? Similarly, further elaborating his concerns, he writes, more specifically, the Quranic text speaks of either of the women forgetting. If it is argued that in this verse, one woman is the prime witness and the other is clearly an assistant, then of what need would there be in the prime witness reminding the assistant witness of an issue if the prime witness is giving testimony? Think about it. If this were truly the case, we would have expected the Quran to assert this need for two women so that if the primary woman forgot, the assistant could remind her. Why instead do the Quranic words lend themselves to a translation for which the word either was chosen? These problems stem from Sohail's lack of understanding of the Arabic language. Given that he's raising these questions with the intention that someone may give him a convincing answer, it nevertheless does not mean that he has now become an expert in the Arabic language and can write several pages over an issue that he does not understand. Furthermore, he wrongly claims the inability of Ahmadi Muslim leadership to answer the arguments and observations in this book speaks loud and clear. Just because a person's allegations have gone unanswered does not mean that no one is able to respond to them. If this were to hold true as a postulate, it would then mean that anything that has ever been said against Sohail, which he has not addressed himself, is true, irrefutable, and unanswerable. Now, coming back to the issue at hand, it should be noted that the Quranic language is called mubin. It's eloquent, it's articulate, it's powerful. Multiple meanings can be driven from a single phrase, even a single word. Keeping this in mind, we turn to the question raised by Sohail, which is directed towards this phrase of the Holy Quran, where it says, أَن تَظِلَّ إِحْدَاهُمَا فَتُذَكِّرَ إِحْدَاهُمَا الْأُخْرَى. The words translated as either of the two women are إِحْدَاهُمَا, and they appear twice in this phrase. A literal translation of إِحْدَاهُمَا is one of the two women. Consequently, a literal translation of the entire phrase would be, if one of the two women should be in danger of forgetting, one of the two women may refresh the memory of the other woman. To make it easier and lucid for modern English readers, the translation writes out the full sentence as, if either of the two women should be in danger of forgetting, the other may refresh her memory. However, regardless of the above adjustment for easier reading, the phrase ihdahuma literally means one of the two women and has been used in other parts of the Holy Quran, such as the verse فَجَاءَتْهُ إِحْدَاهُمَا تَمْشِي عَلَى اسْتِحْيَاءٍ. This is from chapter 28, verse 26, and the translation is, and one of the two women came to him walking bashfully. Now this gets a bit technical, but if you wish to understand this issue, try to follow along. The word ihda comes from the root letters ahada, meaning one. Hence the literal translation of ihda is one, and an implied interpretation is either. This does not mean that the translation either of the two women is wrong. It simply means that what Hazrat Mirza Tahir Ahmad rahimahullah ta'ala has concluded from the actual Arabic wording of this verse is perfectly valid and an accurate understanding and interpretation of this verse. In fact, it is closer to the literal meaning of the phrase ihdahuma. What he has essentially argued is that the Quran does not directly say that either one of the two women can remind the other. The Quran instead says that one of the two women may remind the other. This may seem trivial in the English language, but it is extremely important as a difference, clearly seen in the original Arabic wording. Without having some rudimentary knowledge of Arabic, a person cannot truly appreciate this subtle difference. As far as the issue of identifying the prime witness and her assistant is concerned, the Quran has indicated this by adding the word al-ukhra at the end of the phrase. The word al-ukhra means the latter, ultimate, last, or other. Hence, the prime witness is pointed out in the phrase ihdahuma in the beginning, and the assistant is qualified by using the phrase ihdahuma al-ukhra, that is, one of the two women who is the other, or latter, or last. In fact, the wording of the full phrase even provides a chronology that further elaborates this issue. Dividing the verse into 4 portions, it goes as follows. Antadilla, if she forgets. Ihdahuma, one of the two women, let's call her Aisha. Fatudhakkira, she may remind. Ihdahuma al-ukhra, the other one among the two, let's call her Maryam. In essence, the phrase is saying if Aisha forgets, Maryam may remind her. This is something that a literal, plain reading of the Arabic verse of the Holy Quran easily reveals. Here, Aisha is a prime witness and Maryam is the assistant. The question now becomes simpler. Why has the Quran felt the need to have 2 female witnesses, one prime and one assistant, in financial transactions? Are women deficient in some way in regards to business? Are they considered less efficient in remembering numbers? All these questions seem fair, but they draw from a lack of understanding of what the Quran is teaching at a broader level. First, we must acknowledge that there indeed do exist differences in the genders in terms of how they remember things. As a result, the premise of the Quran is indeed correct. Men and women remember things differently. While men have the upper hand in keeping certain types of memory, women have the upper hand in other types of memory. Those who have researched this issue argue that in general terms, neither gender is superior in memory. However, subtle differences appear in the way things are remembered by men and women. One researcher, Elizabeth Loftus, makes this observation. The results were clear-cut. Males were more accurate and less suggestible about the male-oriented items, while females were more accurate and less suggestible about the female-oriented items. This finding provided clear support for the hypothesis that females and males tend to be accurate on different types of items, perhaps indicating their differential interest in particular items and corresponding differential amounts of attention paid to those items. It is quite remarkable that the premise that the Quran uses for providing an assistant to the female witness is pointing to a memory difference between the genders, something that is only being researched and proven 1400 years after the revelation of the Quran. However subtle the differences, there is no denying that they do indeed exist. This brings us to the broader question of acknowledging gender differences which Islam speaks about. Islam teaches gender equality in the best sense, acknowledging the strengths and weaknesses of both genders and not turning a blind eye to them. All this does not mean that Islam teaches that women are deficient in their memories of certain items such as those related to financial matters. It only means that Islam creates a social climate which intends to empower and favor women. By ensuring that a female prime witness has an assistant, Islam has empowered women and taught them to work together in the face of patriarchy. There is no denying the fact that patriarchy has always existed, and many argue that even in the free societies of the West today, it continues to persist. In light of this fact of life, Islam has dismissed any notion that women should be deprived of being part of the process of witnessing financial transactions. At the same time, it is recognized that patriarchy may come in the way and discourage women from being part of such proceedings. As a result, women are told to go as a pair and not feel any intimidation in such proceedings. This, however, remains as an option for the prime witness who, as pointed out earlier, may not choose to accept any help from the assistant witness. Secondly, it must be noted that Islam is a religion where men and women do not interact in a free manner, as is done in some cultures. Islam safeguards women and men from promiscuity and other evils by ensuring that there is some distance between the two in social gatherings. All of this points to an Islamic social climate as an ideal for Muslim men and women to seek. As such, if a financial transaction is taking place where several men are involved, a single female witness may feel uncomfortable in such an environment, given the social climate that Islam seeks. Hence, she is empowered through the presence of the second assistant witness. It is essentially a supportive system which Islam seeks to establish, not to oppress, but to empower women. Due to the revelations brought about by the Me Too movement in recent years, we are no strangers to the fact that women are sometimes exploited in certain situations and feel more comfortable, relaxed, and empowered when they are in the company of other women. We must also acknowledge that the Quran was revealed initially to an Arab society where women were treated very badly and had no rights at all. It was necessary then to consider the circumstances of such women and to create the means for what Khalil calls breaking down barriers for women in Islamic society. A new civilization was being born with the coming of Islam where women were going to enjoy equal status with men. This change was going to take great courage and efforts to challenge the norms. So, in conclusion, it is completely wrong to assume that Islam considers the testimony of one woman as half of that of a man. The one verse where this teaching is supposed to have come from does not imply that at all. It only speaks of a prime witness and an assistant witness who may help her with some details if the prime witness deems it necessary. Such a teaching is there in Islam to help empower women as part of an Islamic social climate.